my argument was based on the assumption that the temple hadn't been built, that it was destroyed. The only temple that exists right now is us as the temple, according to 1 Corinthians 3:16. Ye are the temple of God.
Right.
And even Jesus, that was the accusation they used to actually crucify him, is because he said, tear down this temple and in 3 days I'll raise it up again. And he was speaking about his body.
Yeah.
So I had always drawn the assumption, well, if you interpret that like the Second Thessalonians, where the man of sin, son of perdition, goes into the temple of God as God, showing himself that he is God. If you interpret that based on the existing temple, which would be us, then it would have to be some kind of a doctrine, like a Muslim belief or something like that, because there's strong Muslim ties in the book of Revelation. When they allow the two witnesses to lay in the street for 3.5 days, when they give out gifts, those are all Islamic practices. But it sounds like what you're saying is that the temple building that we assumed doesn't need to exist because the holy place is there. So whoever, I don't like using the word Antichrist because it's so generic, but whoever this world leader is, that's going to come into the temple, let's call him the man of sin, son of perdition. Whoever this man of sin is, who comes into the temple, all he has to do is go to the holy place and declare that he is God.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, certainly spiritually we are the temple of God, right?
Right.
But oftentimes we have physical realities and spiritual realities, and there's
Sure.
no conflict between both of those things existing at the same time.
True.
And so we can be looking for a physical fulfillment and understand that there's a spiritual reality that is going to be greater fulfilled, right, in future days.
Yeah.
When someday there's New Jerusalem come down and there is no temple.
Right.
But there still seems to be a time for a temple in the millennium. Which is 1,000-year reign. A lot of people have trouble with that or can't understand it. But I think 1,000 years means 1,000 years, and there's also an argument to be made for we're at about 6,000 years of man's history now. And
yeah,
so
I heard you in another video. You had mentioned that that's one of the oldest recorded prophecies in the church, right? That
yes.
There's a 6,000-year period, but we're in the year 5784.
So according to the Jewish calendar, but it's got a couple hundred years of mistake in it.
Sure.
So, but the same thing, we started our, Jesus' birthday was at 1, AD,
Mm-hmm.
except it really wasn't at 1 AD. It was probably at 4 or 5 BC,
right.
From what I've looked at.
Yeah.
But either way, almost everybody agrees it wasn't exactly that date.
Right.
But we don't go back and adjust the calendar because we've got too many dates dated to that.
Sure.
And the Jews are in the same problem.
Yeah.
Because that goes back to 180 AD. And so they've got all these, centuries of keeping time on that. So they're not going to correct. Right?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I assumed that I gave up on the calendar stuff. I make that statement quite regularly on our channel. I've tried following so many different calendar corrections from so many different people, and they all have really good arguments. It's just I don't know who to believe.
Sure.
So I gave up on the calendars. That's why I actually turned to the stars, because I figure in Genesis 1:14, God set the sun, moon, and stars for signs, seasons, days, and years. That's his calendar. That's how we know what day it is, month it is, year it is, when we do the festivals and the seasons. So I'm like, okay, so how much information can I glean just from that based on what we can observe? And I'm telling you that that Revelation 12, 1 and 2 sign, I'm confident that happened on September 23rd, 2017. That seems to be an anchor point that we can actually hang our hat on and start doing calculations to figure out where we are really in the timeline of events. Are you familiar with that? You're familiar with the Revelation 12 sign. Have you looked into it? How rare that was?
Oh yeah. Yep. And I put that in the general sign category, not like I know what I can calculate from it sign.
Uh-huh.
But I do see it as a sign that these are the days.
Yeah.
Right. I just don't see it as okay, from this thing to this thing is this many days.
Correct.
Because I don't know of any reference like that in Scripture. And so but if you add up all the things that have happened lately that have been very sign worthy, even going back to the 4 blood moons,
Mm-hmm.
in 2014 and 2015. It's just, there have been tons.
Yeah.
Like people talk about, signs. Well, oh, there haven't been any signs. I'm like, are you kidding? There
Yeah.
have been more things to watch in the sky, in the heavens, in the last, 10 years than I remember in the 40 years before that.
Yeah.
I'm 50, so.
Yeah, me too. The engineer in me knows that it's like we've lost so much information about the stars. We have an anchor point. Surely there's a way to reverse engineer the information. And I've got some really interesting things that we can talk about. I have some more questions on the Temple Mount before we move on to the star stuff. So I don't want to, we'll save that maybe for later on to get into the stars and the timeline, that the stuff I've worked on. But just putting that out there as something to talk about later.
It was a big sign, no doubt.
Yeah, it was a big sign, and I think it's an anchor point because it's something that that was so big and so rare that it only happens one time, according to my research. And I actually checked all the years for 14,000 years to make sure it doesn't happen, that it never happens exactly that same way, going forwards and backwards in time. Now, it could exist outside of 14,000 years. I only checked 7,000 years in the past and 7,000 in the front, just so I could say that I've checked 14,000 years. But it's at least that rare. And the fact that it anchors to Scripture, I think, is relevant. Thank you for watching this clip from our live show. We present this information for your study and consideration, not as an absolute truth, but as a means to help you form your own understanding. Remember, like the Bereans, we encourage daily study and discernment to determine the validity of these insights. Join us live Sunday through Thursday as we continue this investigative journey, as we study to show ourselves approved unto God. See you there.